Thank you for watching. Today we're going to be talking about the potential for unrest surrounding the upcoming elections, and specifically unrest from a group called Antifa. You're going to want to stick around because I'm going to talk about how these guys actually get paid to do this. And not just a little bit either. They get paid a lot to do this. And it comes out of your pockets. There are two ways that will just absolutely blow your mind. The reason that they wear black clothing and cover their faces is so that they can get away with criminality. When you go to these protests, when I was there in Portland, there were these people in green hats and vests that were walking around, and they called themselves, and they had vests on that said legal observer. And so you might think, hey, that's a great idea. We need to have some people down here that are observing to make sure that the law is not getting broken on either side. And these legal observers were running around with the Antifa guys and were watching and taking pictures of the police, but never of the Antifa people. And then you would notice that the Antifa guys would have a phone number on their arm. And it took me a while to figure out that phone number corresponded to the phone number that was on the signs for the National Lawyers Guild. These people that call themselves the legal observers. Okay, and so these legal observers were nothing of the sort. What they were there to do was to document what the police did, but they did not film what Antifa did. And they were also there to bail out any Antifa people who got put in jail. And they wear these green hats around, and it's a highly communist organization that is very big on environmental justice, social justice, things like that. Very progressive, okay? So that tells you everything you need to know about who these people are. So whatever they call themselves, you can know for sure that they are not that thing that they're calling themselves. Got it? Now, the first time I ran into these kind of people was not in 2020. It was well before that, and it was actually in West Virginia. The same people call themselves Earth First. Earth First is a radical environmental justice organization. What they were doing was they were trying to shut down all the coal mines. So they were going out and blocking the roads leading to the coal mine, chaining themselves to bulldozers, chaining themselves to trees that needed to be cut down, or things like that. They were actually spiking trees with metal spikes so that when they went to cut them down, it would cause the chainsaws to kick back and injure the guys that were doing it. Yeah, Earth Liberation Front is another one. They were also caught burning down things like car dealerships, burning down apartment complexes that were in the process of being built. And what I did is I just walked up to they had rented a house down on Coal River. And so I just walked up to the door of their house and knocked on the door. And the guy answered the door, and he said, "Can I help you?" And I said, I'm a journalist. And they were like, "Oh, great, come right in." They just automatically assumed that I was a lefty because I told them I was a journalist. And so they invited me in, and they started just answering all my questions. Like, how do you guys fund all this? Because what they would do is they would go out every day and get arrested for trespassing on the coal mines. They would go and they would pay their fine, which was like $245. And then they would go the next day and get arrested again, get another ticket. They would go pay their fine. These fines are like parking tickets. You could get 1 million of them, and they're not going to put you in jail for it or anything. So they would just keep paying their fine every day, $250 a day, and then going back and getting arrested the next day. And all that time, the coal mines couldn't operate. So people didn't have work. They were out of jobs. People were getting pretty upset. So I'm like, how are you funding all this? And off camera, they're telling me, see, we actually write grants from the EPA. See, the Environmental Protection Agency has these grants they call environmental justice grants. And we write a grant that we're going to try to raise awareness for the pollution that happens from coal mining. And they get a grant, like hundreds of thousands of dollars for these grants. Then they use that money to pay their ticket every day. They also would get grants from the Sierra Club. Now, the Sierra Club is an outdoor organization that advocates for more outdoor space and taking better care of our air and water and our forests and things like that. That's great. But it is run by a bunch of lefties. And the problem is for them, they don't want to get their hands dirty with things where people could actually get hurt or things that are breaking the law. So what they do is they give grants to Earth First or to the environmental justice organizations. And those guys then take the money and they go do this, okay? Now, these are the very same people that we saw in 2020 out there in Portland protesting against the federal government. Now, how are they making money today? Now, you might say George Soros is probably giving them money, and you would not be wrong about that. I have actually tracked down certain ways that George Soros and his organization is funding all of these different things, okay? And so whether it's immigration, the Open Society Foundation gives money to the Organization for Immigration and Migration, which is a UN private-public partnership. And so that Open Society Foundation, which belongs to George Soros, gives money to OIM. OIM then it facilitates illegal immigration. That's how that money flows. So you would not be wrong to say that the George Soros and his ilk are funding these things. But it's a little more complicated than that. And it's a little more illegal than that. And it's a little more mind-blowing, and it'll literally make you just want to burn something down. So the Open Society Foundation can fund things like printing the signs or sending food, catering food for these direct actions or other protests that they're going to have. So they'll set up a tent near the Black Lives Matter rally and they'll have a ton of food. What George Soros is more about is funding the election campaigns of local electorates, okay? So they'll go to places and where they can make a difference, and they'll give money to the campaigns for district attorneys, okay, prosecutors, judges, people that are mayors, things like that, okay? And they have poured a lot of money, believe it or not, into Portland. But they've got a hard left district attorney elected. They've got a hard left mayor elected. Now, all these guys that they've gotten elected in places like Detroit and Dallas and Chicago and San Francisco and Seattle and Portland and Los Angeles, wherever you see these protests happening, I guarantee you, unless it's just a copycat protest, the ones that are legit, that are big time and get violent, are always in places where there are sympathetic district attorneys, police chiefs maybe, mayors, and maybe even governors, things like that. Always. Why? Why is that? Because then these guys know that they can literally commit felonies and they will not be prosecuted. So they may get arrested by the police, but the police now, they know the deal. And so they realize it's not even worth it to arrest these guys. They're not going to prosecute them anyway. Very few people actually got arrested. So when they get arrested, they go and they get charged by the police with a whole bunch of misdemeanors and felonies. And then they get the charges dropped by the district attorney and they walk free. There's nothing on their record. They don't have anything to show that they committed felonies on police officers. Now, here's where they make money on this. Those National Lawyers Guild people I told you about, the people who are running around in green hats with a legal observer vest on, those people are filming the police and not the protesters. And so then as soon as they get arrested, they get processed, they get bailed out immediately, and later on the charges are dropped. But then they go back and file suit against the police for unlawful arrest, for using excessive force, for whatever, okay? And these national legal defense people are right there to show, oh yeah, look, they were throwing tear gas and they threw one right at my client. Or they were shooting pepper balls and they shot my client right in the eye. Or they were shooting plastic bullets or rubber bullets and they shot my client and he can no longer have children because he got hit in the kanikas. Whatever, okay? They come up with some justification and they sue the city and the state. Now you might say, you know what? Who's going to believe that? Guess what? In the last several years, Denver paid out $1.6 million to just 7 people who got arrested at a riot in their city. That's nothing. Austin, the city of Austin, Texas, paid out $17.3 million to these protesters, okay? New York City has paid tens of thousands each. I was looking for Portland, I think it was 9 million. 9.5 million or something to 343 protesters that's Philadelphia, sorry. In Philadelphia that was paid out. Now, these are people who were breaking the law. These are people who committed felonies. I've been there. I've got the footage. I can tell you beyond a shadow of a doubt, what they were doing was a felony. And yet they got off scot-free. They have nothing on their record. And they're getting millions of dollars from the federal government. Now, that's not the only way that they're making money. A lot of that money will go to the lawyers. A lot of it will go back to this National Lawyers Guild, and they use that for the next protest and the next riot, okay? Now, you may recall when Kamala Harris tweeted out a link to an organization and encouraged people to donate to that organization because that organization donates money to bail people out and get them out of jail. Then guess what? Guess what happens if the state declines to prosecute? If the prosecutor says, or the district attorney says, I'm not going to prosecute this. I'm just going to drop the case. Wipe the slate clean. Then that $2,500 bond that got paid to the court gets returned not to the bond company, but to the criminal, to the person who got arrested. And they get to keep it. Okay, now are you listening to what I'm saying here? Do you see how this works? So I'm happy, hippie, naked, pagan, dancing, frog-licking, tree-hugging, dirt-worshipping hippie. And I decide I'm a blue-haired, nostril ring guy that looked like I just took a header into a tackle box. I got so much metal in my face. And so I'm completely unemployable, and I will never pay federal income taxes because I'll never earn enough money to do that. But I can dress up all in blacks one day, and I can cover my face, and I can go down and I can have a great night just LARPing around, throwing firecrackers and setting things on fire. Who doesn't like to do that? When I get to bully people and act like I've got all the power and try to get arrested, try and hope that I get arrested. Because if I get arrested, then I'm going to go to jail. I have this number that I've written on my arm to the National Lawyers Guild. I call them with my one phone call and say, hey, I got arrested. They put up the bail, that $2,500 or whatever it is, and then I get set free. I wait 6 months or so, and the DA decides not to prosecute. They wipe the slate clean. I've got nothing on my record. And I go back down to the jail, to the courthouse, and I get that $2,500 that I didn't pay, that somebody donated, and that's my pay for being a violent Antifa protester. This is not hyperbole. This is not exaggeration. This is not misinformation or fake news. This is what I have seen with my own eyes. This is what I have heard with my own ears from the mouths of the people who are doing it. And there's plenty of proof out there for it. So you can go to chuckholton.com and you don't have to sign up, and you can see a lot of the stuff that I'm putting up there. But this is what you need to know. And it is something that will only get worse in the days ahead, especially if Donald Trump wins the election. Okay? So that's all I've got for today.